Now we have seen that we were able to use the no argument constructor instead of the default constructor, and we were able to initialize some values for the instance variables. But the thing is, we have the same values for every single object we create. Now the solution to this is to create a constructor that will take values and set those values for those instance variables. So let me go back here and I will come underneath and I will say, okay, this is my parameterized constructor. Again, this is going to have the same name as the class, so public student, and then it's going to give me an error here because it is the same name. But if I start doing this, okay, I will define a string for the first name for my student, and I will also define the last name. And I will just define the major. I don't care about the student ID. I'll just set the student ID, and then we'll see how we can define that major. So string major. Now I can come here and say, okay, first name is equal to whatever first name I get from here. First name. And I'm doing something intentionally here, and you will see in a moment why. Because this is a common problem that we need to prevent. Last name is equal to last name, and then finally the major, I will set that to major. Okay. Now I don't have any errors in here, so let me come back here, and for student 2 I will provide some data. So I'll have first name is John, and this last name is going to be Whites, for example, and the major is going to be computer science. So I'm all set, except if I run it, it gives me nulls back again. I just gave values, and I just said set those values to whatever I get. So what is the problem? Now the problem here is this. It doesn't know whether you mean this first name variable or this first name variable. So how do I say set the variable first name in the instance variables to whatever I give you in the arguments? And this takes us to what we call this keyword. So this is used to differentiate the instance variable from the constructor's argument. When using the same variable name, you will need to use this variable. Ignoring this will ignore the instance variable and will try to match whatever you have from the parameter to the parameter itself, and will ignore that, so you will have a null. When we are not using the same variable name in the arguments of the constructor, we do not need to use this keyword. Other uses are invoking current class constructor or method. We will see more details in the next chapter when we talk about inheritance, because we will be able to call different things from different classes. But for right now, what we need to emphasize on is the use for this keyword is to emphasize the instance variable. So let's go back to Eclipse and see how we can use it. I will say this dot first name is equal to first name, and this dot last name is equal to last name, and this dot major is equal to major. So when I say this dot first name, I'm saying the first name for this object I'm trying to create is going to come from the first name variable that I'm providing in the constructor call. Let me save this. And let me go back and run the same code. Now I have John, null, computer science. Why I have null here? Because I did not define anything for student ID. Remember, I defined it for first name and last name, so I can just go and last name here, and I will get some value for this. And we got our student right here. Now, as you've seen, I have two constructors, and I have one constructor that defines just those things. I can come here and say this dot student ID. I don't have to use this keyword because I'm giving it a direct value, but it's always a good practice to emphasize that you are referring back to the variable in there. So I can say, okay, this is going to be st000001, which is my default student ID. Now if I come back to my driver class and try to print my student ID again, I will get a value for that because I assigned it in my constructor. Now, having more than one constructor, is it possible? The answer is yes, which takes us to constructor overloading. Now, a class may have any number of constructors that you need. You can have one constructor, two constructors, three, as much as you need for your specific class. Now, the thing is, we'll have different number of arguments. We'll be initializing different class variables. Now I can go ahead here and say, okay, I need another constructor here that will set the student ID as well. So let me have it like this, string student ID. And then I will say this dot student ID is equal to student ID. Now, will this constructor make any problem with this constructor? Will it just cause any trouble? The answer is no. I saved it and I can use this. I can come in here and create a third student, and this is S3, and in this case I will use a student ID for this, so ST000002. So this is my third student, and let me call that student, for example, Mary, and any last name, something like that. So I print S3. Now I can just go ahead and print that, save everything, and print it out, and I have my third student. So I can invoke any constructor from the list of my constructors as long as I follow the same order of arguments and provide the same number of arguments. Now, this order in here has to be the same order you specified in your constructor. Since I have only strings in my constructor now, I don't have any problems if I mix them up. It's not going to give me a syntax error, but it's going to give me a logical error because I may have the student ID in the place of the student name or in the place of the student's major. And this is what we call a parameterized constructor. Now, a quick recap on the constructors. The default constructor is not going to be there in the code. The Java compiler is going to provide it when you don't have any constructor. The no argument constructor is going to have no arguments in the argument list, and it can set some of the instance variables, while the default constructors cannot set any of those instance variables. And finally, the parameterized constructor is going to have a list of parameters, and you can set any instance variables you use in your class, and you can have more than one parameterized constructor as per your need for your class implementation.